Hello, my name is Amanda Ignafo. I'm going to be presenting my CAP 2 on lactate for Kinesiology 515 Advanced Exercise Physiology. Starting out with the lactate pathway. Lactate is a byproduct of anaerobic glycolysis, so as we've previously touched on, when oxygen is not present, we can still go through the glycolysis process, but instead of moving into the mitochondria, instead, when O2 is not present, lactate is formed. So this on the left, you'll see that picture. If we had oxygen present, the glucose would be able to be broken down to pyruvate, move into the mitochondria where it can go through the TCA cycle and the electron transport chain. Without oxygen present, you see it is not able to go into the mitochondria. Instead, that pyruvate moves and is turned into lactate. Lactate is a buffer and it does help keep our body from becoming acidic. So as you see this hydrogen right here that attaches to the pyruvate, this is the forming of lactate or lactic acid. Moving into the Cori cycle. So when we have hydrogen buildup in the muscle during exercise, lactate is also produced in the muscle to help buffer and keep it from becoming too acidic. Lactate then moves into the bloodstream and to the liver. In the liver, lactate is converted back to pyruvate and then glucose, so this is a form of gluconeogenesis. So breaking that down in the picture here, we see that glucose is used in the muscle. As we know, it turns to pyruvate. Oxygen is not present, so it turns to lactate. Then, through the bloodstream, it's able to be carried to the liver, where that lactate can turn back into pyruvate and back into glucose, which can be fueled again as a fuel source to the muscle. Exercise intensity is something that impacts the lactate production. So with low intensity, there's going to be very little lactate produced. With moderate intensity, we do have some lactate made, and with high intensity, that's when we see the lactate can rise very quickly. So the reasons why lactate does rise with a higher intensity is because there's less oxygen available, so we are working in the anaerobic glycolysis, which then moves to lactate. Even if oxygen is present, we can still build up lactate. This is because the body is not able to keep up with the speed of glycolysis that's needed for pyruvate to be produced fast enough in the mitochondria and oxidized for more lactate. So moving into training adaptations, increased mitochondria density is a training adaptation that will affect the production of lactate. The reason for this is because more pyruvate can be oxidized instead of converted to lactate with more mitochondria density. So think of the bigger picture. If we have more mitochondria, then we are more able to move through that process rather than moving into lactate, if you think back to that previous picture. So training styles that would help improve this would be steady state cardio or HIIT. And another training adaptation is higher oxidative enzyme activity. So what this means is we have more enzymes that are needed for the TCA cycle. They're more available to be used and help that process happen. Exercises we can do to improve this would be cardio and HIIT training. Moving on to another adaptation is increased capillary density. This is when there are more tiny blood vessels surrounding the muscle so that there can be more transport, whether that be of oxygen or fuel sources to and from the muscle. And things that will affect this exercise-wise are long duration cardio and consistent cardio. Now lastly, another adaptation is improved lactate clearance. This is when the body becomes more effective at moving the lactate out. So that would be with increased lactate transporters, as well as a better ability for that buffering system. And high intensity cardio is something that helps this adaptation occur. So what is the difference between lactate and lactic acid? Lactic acid does have an extra hydrogen attached. Lactic acid is a very temporary form because it is very acidic, so the body does not like to stay with the lactic acid. Instead, right after it's formed, that molecule is immediately broken down, losing that hydrogen where it does become lactate. So you'll see here's the extra hydrogen with lactic acid, and then when that hydrogen is removed, we have lactate, which is no longer an acidic molecule. So again, this is the buffering system that helps our body from becoming too acidic. So previously, lactate used to be thought of as a fatigue waste, something that kind of had a negative connotation with building up or existing in the muscle. But now we have a better understanding, knowing that lactate is actually a reusable fuel source. So lactate can be used as fuel. Lactate can be used when O2 does become available. So when your exercise intensity decreases down to like low or moderate exercise, and you do have oxygen available, now the lactate is able to be used as fuel, as we had earlier talked about in the Cori cycle here, by being pulled to the liver and back into glucose. Or another way that can happen is it can be converted back to pyruvate and move into the mitochondria to fuel aerobic ATP production. So when that oxygen is available, that's what this image is showing, is it is able to be turned back into pyruvate and brought into the mitochondria, then going through that same system that we're familiar with. So finally, going on to lactate acid buildup. When exercise intensity is very high, that's when we have more lactate acid buildup and lactate buildup. It's produced faster than it can be cleared, so that's why this happens. Whether or not oxygen is present, sometimes the body can't keep up with the speed. The hydrogen ions do rise in the area, and muscle pH does drop. Things that affect this are the enzymes working less efficiently, muscle contraction being impaired. You can start to feel this burning sensation or fatigue, and exercise isn't able to be sustained as long. So this is when you're going through a rapid physical activity and you reach failure, that would be experiencing that, or when you're going through a workout and you feel the burn in your muscle. That has to do with the lactate buildup and also the hydrogen buildup, where it's becoming a more acidic environment. So the acidity is what keeps all of these normal processes from functioning, and the reason why our performance and exercise at high intensity does eventually reach a stopping point. These are the references that were used, and that summarizes my overview of lactate. Thank you.